today we don't need a quorum, we just need a third of our members to be present. So we've got present now Mr. Singh, Metlakude, Mematlangu, Ms. Lasoma, Mr. Julius, Mr. Brautaseth, Ms. Maotwe, and Mr. Hai. So we've got a third of our members present and we can continue with the meeting. We received apologies from Mr. Kaiso, Memashlo, and Mr. Sheikh Imam. They are attending portfolio committees at the moment.
Okay.
So at least the chairperson is here. Will be
Khatev is definitely present. Cindy, Khatev is definitely present.
Apologies, Mr. Hadebe.
Okay.
Colleagues.
Morning, Whip.
Morning.
Cindy.
Morning, Ben coaches and
Yes,
everyone in the meeting.
You're all welcome, members. We are starting now with the formal meeting. Can we request that you all mute your mics? Cindy, can you flag the agenda on the screen?
Okay. I'm going to try. Okay.
Share screen, Cindy.
Yes, Mr. Singh.
Are you winning, Cindy?
I'm almost there,
If
ma'am. Just find it for you. Can you see it, Mabe?
No. Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much. Cindy, you only read members present. You did not acknowledge any apologies. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, we have received apologies from Mr. Kaiso, Mem Mashlo, and Mr. Sheikh Imam. All three are attending portfolio committees at the moment.
Yes, okay, noted. Can we then go to the second item, which is the Executive Authority Political Overview of Parliament Annual Performance Plan. Before we do that, I would want to acknowledge and welcome the speaker in this meeting and request that the speaker introduces entourage. And then after that, I would want us to, firstly, maybe before we do that, get a member to propose for the adoption of this agenda, and the other one seconding. Then we will then hand over to the speaker to then introduce a delegation. Then after that, then they will then continue with she will then start with the political overview. If there is anything that you would want to say before the presentation is being presented to us. Can I get the person to firstly propose and accept that the agenda is in order?
Chairperson, this is
Chairperson,
speaking.
I
I propose that the agenda be adopted.
Thank you.
Chairperson, Singh here. I second, and I take it that when we say executive authority, it'll be both the speaker and the chairperson of the NCOP who will share the time.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me just say executive authorities, because if I say speaker, then it eliminates Ntatema Sondo. Ntatema Sondo, you are also welcome. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Executive authorities, You can decide who's going to do the political overview, but before you do that, please introduce your delegation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, coaches. Ndatema Sondo and I are in your committee today. It's very difficult on the virtual platform. But the two of us, together with the acting accounting officer, Mechawa, I can't see all the members of your entourage, so I am going to defer the introduction of everybody to you. But I don't even think we have the luxury of time. So Mechawa will be there to lead the parliamentary administration. Ndatema Sondo and I will be there as the overall executive authority. And Ndatema Sondo, I don't know if you want to bell the cat on the political overview of Parliament's annual performance plan.
No, not really, but maybe just to say a few words. This is not meant to be really exhaustive. Just a few words, and hoping that after the plan is presented and the discussion is ahead, that will assist a great deal in clarifying matters. Firstly, just to make the comment that all of us understand that there is such a thing as a big picture, and in the context of South Africa, Parliament does not just act alone. It is part of the overall situation in the country. As all know, I mean, the economy is not performing that well. There's unemployment. There's a question of poverty that we're committed, all of us are committed to addressing in an ongoing way. There's growing inequality. And in the context of today, also the fact that there's the context of COVID-19, and therefore people being infected globally, over 16 million people. In terms of South Africa, we're now moving towards, I think, 500,000. May not yet be there, but that's the direction that it's taking. So as we grapple and discuss a variety of issues, as we discuss issues related to Parliament, we do so with the view of ensuring that we comply with both constitutional and legal imperatives. Parliament is amongst others charged with the responsibility of ensuring oversight and accountability, continuously providing a national platform for debate, even during the COVID-19 challenge. We seek to reinforce diplomacy and ensure that Parliament as an institution becomes an activist Parliament that is responsive to the needs and issues that are being raised by people in an ongoing way in various communities. Of course, we want also to, in an ongoing way, to be building a capable, we seek to build a capable, ethical, and a developmental state. So what I'm basically saying, Speaker, Chairperson, is that our response is broadly captured in the strategy of Parliament or plan, and to achieve all of this, we need to allocate resources, and the annual performance plan must move us in this broad kind of direction. So one hopes that as we engage and debate the issues, these are some of the ideas that we will keep in mind. Hopefully we'll remain focused, and at the end of our term, we must be able to say, indeed, we've been able to do and realize the responsibilities that were set for, and the target and goals and responsibilities that were set for ourselves. That's really, it's a brief comment, not meant to be exhaustive, but that during the debate, as we engage the issues, having had the plan being tabled, we will then be able to elaborate on many or some of these issues. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Masondo. I think so far as Parliament, we tried our utmost best. I'm not sure about the meetings that we hosted. In our last meeting, we had the accurate numbers. I'm not sure to date how many meetings have we hosted at Parliament, but we tried very hard under these difficult conditions to continue hold the executive accountable and to also keep our people informed as to what is happening, not only in South Africa but globally. So it's something that we commented in the last meeting. Thank you very much. I want to then allow the executive authorities to officially hand over to the acting secretary of Parliament to then take us through the presentation.
Thank you, Chairpersons. Mekiawa, please represent Parliament, present the annual performance plan and the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, co-chairs, and thanks, Speaker and Chair. Yes, indeed, we have the senior managers with us. The CFO is here, the ICT manager is here, SMG strategy team is here, the Secretary to the National Assembly, the apology from the Secretary to the NCOP, who will join us later, and HR, who will join us later. We have the Division Manager Facilities, and of course, what we're presenting today is a revision of the APP, which was tabled last year, June. That is for 2020-2021. We will also present to you the adjustment amount, and we will also present the revised APP along the adjusted budget as after the special adjustment by the minister. So as the co-chair said, we will not necessarily go line by line, but cover the areas that are important, because this document is not a new document. I must say that we have also presented to the Executive Authority the revised APP has been signed off and has been tabled. So it is currently what we are implementing as managers in Parliament. Can we go to the next slide, Cindy? Move the slide, Cindy. Okay. In terms of the 6th Parliament policy priorities and the strategic plan, which was tabled on the 27th of February, the policy priorities of Parliament do not change because indeed they are based on the Constitution. However, for the 6th Parliament, what has been emphasized is strengthening oversight and accountability as the main priorities that require the following: more time for committee oversight, greater member capacity, improvement of research, and ensuring effective public involvement. These aspects were again reiterated in the strategic sessions that we had with both the multi-party team in the NA and the NCOP. We even engaged with the NCOP committees at the Taj, where in fact the NCOP committees structured their programs for oversight for the 6th year. So this APP must be seen as a transition into the next APP of the outer years, 2021 to 22, 22 to 23. And we will show you the indicative amounts that have been given by Treasury to date. Indicative because they haven't been appropriated or allocated. The next slide just provides, I think we've shared this with the committee, and it's a strategy map. On that, it is very clear that right at the top of the slide, we look at the impact that South Africans must experience if Parliament were to do an effective oversight and accountability over the executive. The reduction of poverty, increasing government responsiveness and accountability, improving oversight over the budget legislation, of course. All of that would then impact on the reduction of poverty, better skills, reduction of inequality in South Africa. Right at the bottom, this is where we need to structure ourselves so that we're able to have better input into the work of Parliament through members, have better analysis, do better public information and access for the people, have a better process of tracking the resolutions, petitions, or any information that comes through Parliament that assesses the impact of Cabinet and the Executive on how they're improving the lives of people through the legislations that are passed by Parliament. And of course, to do that, we need better data and systems. We need technologies, and it's very evident that today our technological infrastructure has been stretched throughout the country and the world. And by now, at least we have advanced. And I must say, indeed, the co-chairs are correct and the executive authority is correct that we've had to leap ahead of ourselves once COVID impacted on us. And of course, in the middle of it there is all what has to be organized across the two houses, that there's increased constituency oversight work and of course plenary oversight work. And of course, a lot of those activities in the middle of this strategy map is some of the matters that came up from the plannings that we had with members. Can we move on to the next? As I said, can we move on to the next slide? Slide number 5. Thank you. As I indicated that this annual performance plan and the budget was approved and tabled in June 2019. And this APP serves as a transitional instrument as it was presented and tabled before the finalization of the sixth Parliament strategy. And of course, the revision was delayed to accommodate the special adjustment. And of course, finally, this particular APP was tabled on the 16th of July 2020, signed off by the Executive Authority in line with the FMPPLA articles. Can we move on? I have indicated that, of course, what came in was as a result of that, of the disaster, national state of disaster that was declared by the president. There was all the budgets of the country to ensure that we have a better COVID-19 budget. Minister of Finance tabled a special adjustment on the 24th of June. Currently, Parliament budget baseline has been reduced by 80 million, and we further expect that there might be an adjustment again in October, whichever direction, but it's most likely downward revision. And we will share with honorable members in the next slide as to where the 80 million came from, and then we can respond to questions later. The next slide indicates the vote to, which is a Parliament vote. Can we move on to the next slide? There you can note, honorable members, where the deductions happened. The bulk of it came from associated services, which was 27 million. Then the support services, 16 million. 5 million from core business, and of course 7 and 4. We have gone through our budget and realized that there will not be a direct negative impact, at least currently, because a lot of that would have come from unutilized funds during the first quarter of this financial year due to COVID, and that relates to physical oversight that is exercised by various committees when going to various parts of the country. That travel did not happen. And of course, the travel for members did not happen. So the chunk of the 80 million comes from those other areas. And we have then asked our colleagues to adjust backwards in terms of what they had requested last year. I can say at least confidently that currently the adjustments sitting at 80 million will not necessarily impact directly on the MPP as outlined. However, what happens after October going forward, I do not know, and none of us know. And obviously, what has happened is Treasury does consult. I was verifying with the Speaker and the Chair of the Executive Authority as they asked whether there has been any discussions. We do work with the technocrats of National Treasury, and I shared with the Executive Authority that initially there was a percentage given for all departments to cut their baselines. I'm sure it was 10%, I can't remember the percentage. I can tell you that, honorable members, when we got from our technocrats of National Treasury, they were cutting about 340 million from Parliament. We understand very well that the budget of Parliament cannot be subjected to that of the departments because we're not a department. However, we still draw from the same fiscus. We couldn't have said that budget shouldn't be cut. Can we go on to the next? The revised 2020 budget of Parliament adjusted situational analysis. We've had to adjust the situational analysis. The program structure, go back to the slide 7, please, Cindy. Slide 8. Yeah, okay, then. The next one, that's fine. Please go on. I'm sorry. Go on. Thank you so much. Right. Thanks. We've had to do an analysis of the situation and revisit the situation, because each time you develop a strategy, you do have to look at what is the international environment like, your most immediate environment, and of course, how this impacts on your work. Obviously, the impact of COVID-19 has impacted on the GDP growth and the reduction of tax revenue. Of course, Parliament will forever be, for a while, under a downward pressure. Of course, there was a disruption of the old style of working as a result of the health risk that it was bringing in. And of course, that there could be continuous disruptions and further resource constraints. And then we also say, in terms of the situation that we operate within, the institution may be catapulted, and we actually have been catapulted to using more technology and relying largely on technology. We have to be very efficient in the manner in which we work. What this means is more and more of our budget should be slanted towards technologies that enable members to work. And this brings into the fore issues such as movement towards electronic voting, issues such as how do we conduct public participation, how do we establish webinars for public participation, how do you establish forums for people to interface with Parliament and know the work of Parliament and access information on Parliament. I think lastly, what we also identified was the extent to which the parliamentary PCOs will have to work, because they will become the repositories of information and activities for Parliament. And a lot of members may be, for a long time, bound to work from their constituencies than travel from Cape Town to their constituencies like it was before. And of course, we have realized that there are other constraints and risks that will be amplified by the pandemic impact that is post post the COVID, as we anticipate. The world will never be the same, and Parliament won't be the same. The next slide, what we're sharing with yourselves is that with the 6th Parliament, we have changed the budget structure. We have actually presented that to the Executive Authority. Of course, the change will happen later on. And what the change does is it begins to organize the program structure, and we shared with the committee. It begins to organize the program structure such that it gives meaning and impetus on the work and the mandate of Parliament. So it structures the NA business and the NCOP business under which there is then support as you would know it. We've also revised some of the, of course, we have the budget structure that dictates performance information. Then we're utilizing existing performance indicators for this 2021. Yes, we know that we are transiting, but they are actually being kept. Into the future, we do want to track the usefulness of the work or the information that we provide to members. And you will see when we report going forward that we're beginning to talk about how useful is it that the information that we provide to members, instead of just discussing and presenting turnaround time like we've been doing for a while. The next slide just shares with honorable members the programs, and I think we have shared this a lot of the time. I will not waste your time on that. The first program is that of strategy and leadership. It constitutes of those sub-programs. Program 2, administration, constitutes of those sub-programs, and of course up until program 5. The different budget structure that we have spoken about is going to change, and we'll come back and share again with the committee. I wish to say that once we change the program structure, we have to submit it to National Treasury so that it talks to their database. To do that, we have a time limit around July, end of July, we should have submitted that, but it gets implemented a year later. So for a while, we're going to be reporting against the 5 programs whilst we're transiting to a new program structure, which will then inform our E&E chapter, which we need to develop ourselves because Treasury has made it very clear that they will not develop the E&E for us anymore. The next slide, on our members, Speaker and Chair, it is just an indication of the budgets per program as aligned to the adjusted budget. Not much has changed. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. For 2021, the total of the budget against those programs, until all of it, is 2.7. That is the total of Parliament's budget. And then, of course, the 2 years are the outer years. Can you go back, please, to adjusted budget columns? Slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I have my slides differently numbered. Yes, that one is from slide 11. I was just talking on that. This is the total budget that we have, 2.7 billion for this year. And then the outer years are just an indication of what we anticipate we'll receive. However, like I said earlier on, given the economy of the country, this can actually be reduced, may be adjusted. But these are some of the things that we will monitor and give reports to the Executive Authority. We have had an engagement with the Executive Authority to say currently what we're going to do with the 2.7 billion. We're going to make sure that on a quarterly basis, at least they receive a report on emerging expenses or emerging expenditures as a result of COVID. So we'll have to give continuous reports on the expenditure patterns across the various programs as the year continues. This will also assist on two levels. The first level will be if, for instance, we overspend, we're able to report and share with the Executive Authority which areas are we spending on. And then secondly, if we underspend, we actually have to show which areas are we underspending on, because the worst we want is for Parliament to stay with excess budget whilst there are other institutional functions, operations that are being deprived of access to budget, given the constraints of the fiscus in the country. Can we move on? Program performance information. I think what obviously I have discussed earlier on and shared with yourself is Currently, we have the existing indicators that we say will actually be retained, and they will transition into the next year in terms of the 2021-2022. But then, of course, we have some of the operational plans that would not necessarily have these indicators going forward. The indicators of the program of Parliament are inserted in the new APP going forward, and we have indicated them in the first few slides I showed you. The Advisory and Information Service uses the Service Charter. We have shared the Service Charter with this committee, wherein we talk about the turnaround time of 8 days and so on and so forth. This is an area where we transit into usefulness. We know that we will have to do a lot of work in terms of establishing criteria of what we mean by usefulness. And this is an area where we also are going to request over time to work very closely with members who will feed in on real-time impression or their levels of satisfaction with respect to the services that they are receiving from ourselves. In terms of the support services, we still have the measurements that are useful that we derive from the service that we give to you. This slide explains the MTSF. With respect to the MTSF that is now published, that gives Parliament an increased radar of oversight. There are 7 priorities in terms of the MTSF, which have got 81 outcomes with 561 indicators that have to be oversighted by Parliament and scrutinized by Parliament, so that you assess the government's performance and also assessing government's impact on these legislations and the service provision that they have, the service delivery that they have to deliver. And of course, aligned to the annual performance plans that members have been scrutinizing currently through the portfolio committees, as well as the select committees, through the mini plenaries, as well as the engagements from the NCOP select committees over the various departments that have been presented to ourselves. What this means is there has to be, and there will have to be, continuous scrutinizing of whether the very budget that's been reduced is definitely going to the services that have to be delivered as per the annual performance plans by the executive. Can we move on? Next slide. On this slide, what we actually are showing is the MTSF outcomes. I will just concentrate on the last column. You will see that the outcomes of the MTSF is that growth by 2030 should be sitting at 5.4%. Unemployment should have reduced by 6%. Employment should have increased by 23.8 million. Investment in the country in terms of percentage of the GDP should be sitting at 30%. Inequality Gini coefficient should reduce towards 0, meaning that it should reduce by 0.08 by 2030. And then, of course, poverty reduction. No poverty should be there in the country. That is what the MTSF outcomes are indicating. Poverty at low band should actually be sitting at 0. Obviously, these are long-term outcomes that have to be observed or have to be met. And they can only be met if there's effective oversight and accountability coming from Parliament and scrutinizing the work of each of those departments, and also scrutinizing the impact that the executive has on the lives of the people. With respect to the structure of the program, as indicated, I will not waste time. We have those parliamentary services, we have the indicators. We will be reporting from quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 4 on various indicators as outlined in program 1, and that program constitutes of those sub-programs as outlined there. I must hasten to say, as indicated, that the Parliamentary Budget Office will not necessarily be reporting, we will not be reporting on it, primarily because it is managed under the Money Bills Act and related matters, and it means the PBO will be reporting separately going forward beyond this transitional APP. The Treasury Office, which is not established, we have been busy with shortlistings, and we are at a point where we actually are requesting to have talent search, because this is an office that assists the executive authority and gives it assurance on how budget is used against the APP that will have been presented by the accounting officer to them. That's an office that supports them, and we hopefully by the end of this year, we shall have resolved an appointment of that service or that function in the offices of the Executive Authority, and they are a direct report to the Executive Authority. Can we move on, colleagues? Next slide. Somebody, can we move on to the next slide, please? Cindy? Okay, please move on the slides quickly. This is just an outline of what budget goes to that program. It's sitting at 112 million. I have said many times to the committee, to Speaker and Chair, that the PBO remains an unfunded mandate. We're quite aware that it was established, but we transfer budget from the budget of Parliament to the PBO. That's a matter that this committee has continuously said there has to be a discussion with National Treasury at a certain point in time, because this is an independent office. It has to be funded correctly. And I think the timing of that conversation makes it even more harder because of the environment within which we find ourselves. However, the PBO does exist. It is delivering on its function. It reports to the Advisory Council in terms of the Act. And we still transfer budget to them to cover their running costs. The lower part of the chart just shows the economic classification, and I won't waste your time on that because nothing much has changed. Can you move on to the next program, please? The next program is program 2, which has got those sub programs under it. And the two indicators under that program is the number of the member capacity programs that we provide to members. Indeed, that is going to be one element that's going to be a challenge to how we deliver, because naturally what would have happened is members would have been on training and going to whatever institutions offer that training. However, it will mean there has to be creative thinking around that. Currently, what we're doing with at least the virtual platforms is we have trained a lot of members, and I must say, co-chairs, Speaker and Chairperson, we're excited to actually report that a lot of members have come onto our online training, particularly for preparedness of the virtual training, because that is what they depend on to do their work. It is going to be an important area that we look at how we're going to deliver on the type of programs that we offer to members, and of course align them to a lot of other training short courses programs that enable members to deliver on their mandate, as discussed at the strategy evolution of the 6th Parliament Strategic Plan. The second indicator, honourable members, it is an indicator that talks to the sector programs and sector cooperation, largely funded by the EU budget, the EU donor fund, which has been a fund given to the sector to develop programs and support members over a long time. It's been on with us, and the program has got a year of another 4 years or so. We have to report on that donor fund, but when the donor fund is not expended, we are not entitled to do anything with us, but we report on it because we sit with it in our FMO offices, and the accounting officer of Parliament is responsible for that. You will see the 41 million, so that's the additional budget that comes from the European Commission. Can we move on? Program 3. Cindy? Thank you. The program 3 talks to knowledge, information, or research, or support to committees, international relations, the functioning and operations of the National Assembly and National Council on their normal operations. And in fact, the first indicator we have there is the annual parliamentary framework adopted. This is quite a new indicator, which begins to talk to the 6th Parliament priority, as I had actually presented in the earlier slides. And then, of course, we have And these are regular. Obviously, for the NCOP and NA to sit, they have to produce a program. But we thought it's important that it be included in the new APP going forward and starting now, because that then derives how joint oversight is conducted, where there is need for, how joint public participation is conducted, where there is need for. So we're beginning to converge the two houses so that there is shared programs. And of course, that on its own will deal with how we integrate the shared services, shared advisory services in the organogram or in the operational structure that we actually are proposing. And we have proposed and shared with both this committee and of course endorsed by the Executive Authority. Can we go quick to the next slide? Program 3, advisory research and information, that we have always been reporting against the service charters. We will continue to do that, transition it from just bean counting to usefulness. And this is where we need indeed to work in a structured manner to get feedback from members of parliament on the services that they receive from administration, and beyond that, how those services can actually be improved over time. Then, of course, we've got public involvement under program 3. These two indicators are largely informed by the surveys that we conduct. And those surveys we've always presented to the committee. And we have set those targets of an estimate of 14% and 7.2% of people who can participate, who are able to participate in Parliament's activities. It may be seen as small percentages, but if one converts it, if a survey is based on 35 million South Africans who are eligible to be sampled, a 3.5 population sample can be weighted against the population, and it actually is critical, as in like significant, statistically significant. That's an area where we continue to do that. But I must say, honorable members, that what we have realized that in between, we can put tools that can coordinate and pick data before we actually look at the results of an annual survey, because that annual survey becomes just a mirror against which we look at ourselves. In terms of that program, the budget sits at 709 million. And as I said, that there were obviously reductions around areas of core business, around oversight in particular. The two outer years are just estimates, indicative figures that we have been given as in terms of the MTSF allocation. Can we move on quickly? The program number 4, this is the program that definitely has part of its surveys and of course ICT as well as facilities. And we have put on those indicators. I think the most important thing, honorable members, is we're going to see an increase on the demands of our infrastructure between ICT and communication. And they have interdependencies because ICT provides platforms, and of course, communication provides the content that we communicate to the public. So those areas will over time become our key budget drivers as and when we increase the bandwidth like colleagues are doing, increase tools of trade like we are currently doing, finding ways of supporting members in many ways, and activating instruments like My Parliament app, which we think can actually assist to coordinate communication and information for members. I'm going to move on. Please, can we move? Slide number 5. The next slide number 24. That's an allocation of, no, go back. Yes. On our members, that's just an allocation budget of 479 million as per program 4. Nothing much changes there. And then we've got the indicators, the indicative amounts on the outer years. Move on to program 5. Program 5 is associated services on our members. It is straightforward. It looks at the travel, communication, entitlements of members, of course, and financial support to political parties, a matter that still remains with respect to the fact that we depend on the formula in terms of the policy in the IEC formula to allocate party funding. And I suppose it's an area where continuous discussion will be held at different levels. And of course, the expenditure against that program is, as outlined, is 720 million. The transfers to parties is what's put out there. a lot of the time there has not been, there has always been an argument of what informs the political party funding. But I think, and as far as we as administration do it, we do it in terms of the IEC and the number of seats per party in both houses. And we continue to get that allocation from Treasury. We have argued within administration that because to us, it's like we're just a conduit. It may well be that political funding should actually be subjected to the Political Funding Act and the IEC and be in one area. The last but one slide. I think we just want to say that there's an expectation of a further downward adjustment in the medium-term expenditure framework, and that we as management have developed 3 scenarios and we'll continue to work on that. And the scenarios are: 1, if, for instance, the budget is cut, what are the things that, guided by the executive authority and the members and on this committee, will have to be given guidance of what do you prioritize in terms of the policies of the strategy plan of the 6th Parliament and the policy priorities, and what do we take onto the outer years from 2021 to 2022. Secondly, if, for instance, members are not able to travel for a longer time, 6 months, 12 months, what are the infrastructure that we'll have to introduce to ensure that members work effectively wherever they are at? What is going to be the demands of the PCA, the constituency officers, infrastructure, things that we'll have to do to support the constituency offices where members are operating from? These are all the scenarios that we do not know about, but we expect that these will be emerging scenarios. And then, of course, the most important thing, Chairperson, is what happens then with our 1,365 employees on Parliament who've always been on the precinct. Currently, we are all virtual. Some people come in, and there are areas where you have your human resources, ICT, and individual members, and of course, internal audit coming onto the precinct to work. How are we going to change the style of work of our researchers? Are we going to go into flexi time? How are we going to manage interpretation and the translation? What models are we going to be adopting? So there's quite a lot up in the air, and what administration is trying to do is try to map out the various scenarios that may shape going forward and how we're going to respond to them. And then, of course, accordingly, the 2020 APP will be revised in November in light of any other matter that might come during the the MTBPS, yes. And of course, that would then lead to the draft 2021 and APB that might be revised by March 2021. The next slide is the end of the presentation. And thank you so much for your attention, co-chairs, Speaker and Chair, and honorable members. Thank you so much. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chawa, for the opportunity. We are now going to the next item, which is discussions. And I'll rely on you, Cindy, for identification of members who want to speak or who want to ask questions or seek clarity. So please give me the names. Members indicate through our chat or raise your hand icon if you have on your gadget. Okay, who's the first one?
So far, there's nobody, Ms. Mahlangu.
Honorable members, can you indicate, please?
Co-chair, we cannot indicate on this one, but yes, please, can I be noted?
Honorable Julius.
Khadebe also wants to be noted.
Khadebe.
And Khai.
On Khai. Okay. Who else?
Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Singh.
Mema Otwe as well.
Mem who?
Yes, thank you.
Mema Otwe.
Mem Maotwe. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And then the co-chairperson will come after. Thank you, Honorable Julius. Can you start with the questions? You're the first.
Thank you, Coach. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, speaker and the chairperson of the MTSF. Just two issues. First one on slide 25. Member facilities will increase by almost 75% in 2021. Can you just tell us what the views are?
I'm struggling. Am I the only one who's struggling to hear Honorable Julius?
Yeah,
Chair, we can't hear the question at all.
Just switch off your video, maybe it might help. And other members, let's switch off our mics. Try again, Honorable Julius, please.
Yes, thank you, Coach. Member facilities will increase by almost 70%. To know what are the reasons
Honorable Julius.
Say we can't hear.
Honorable Julius. Honorable Julius.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you still on the line? We can't hear you really. I don't know what's wrong with your connectivity that side. Let's try the last time, and if we still can't hear you, I will request that you write your question on the chat. Please, let's try again.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Let's go.
Okay, yes. My first question on slide 25, members' facilities will increase by almost 75% in the 2021-22 projection. I want to know what are the reasons for this. When there's a noise coming from somewhere, it's not from me. There's a disturbing noise when I talk, and then that noise comes, and it's not from my side. But let me continue with the second one. Coach, I'm glad that the speaker and the chairperson of the NCP is here. I want to labor this point that we discussed in one of our previous meetings. And that is the issue of our target of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Now, I fail to see whether we can have a strategy to reduce unemployment, poverty, and inequality in our country if, as a committee, we don't have a plan to measure it. We only have the survey, the annual surveys, and that cannot be the only thing. How are we supposed to hold the executive accountable? My proposal is, Chairperson, is that we as a committee to get from the chief and the chairperson of the NCP a report on the implementation of the executive. What do they do to reduce unemployment, inequality, and poverty? Then, as a committee, we can do something about it. But as a committee, we cannot say the parliament cannot be held responsible for something that we are not liable for. Where is our role in all of this? Let's say, for instance, we have a reduction in the budget of Parliament of 80 million. And Mustawa reported that it won't have a significant impact on this. What will the impact be on our role? Inequality, poverty, and unemployment. It will have a definite role if we are involved there. So my proposal to the Speaker and the Chair of the NCOP is that we should get a report as a committee. If we make it one of our strategic objectives, That was also taken in the first Parliament when we adopted the outcome-orientated goals, and that was to enhance Parliament's oversight and accountability over the work of the executive to ensure implementation of the medium-term strategic framework. Now, we cannot really do that if we don't get a report on what did they do, each and every department, in terms of reducing unemployment, inequality, and poverty. And I really want to stress that I think we must find a way or two. The annual survey cannot be the only tool that we can use to hold the executive accountable. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you very much. We were struggling. I saw even the chairperson was trying to put his ear next to the laptop to hear you, but it was better than the first time. Honorable Khadebe.
No, thank you, Co-Chairperson. And then first of all, I'd like to appreciate the presentations made by the executive authority to Babu Masondo, plus the acting secretary to Parliament. I think Uba Masondo was correct that what we're faced with is extraordinary. This has affected the entire world. So it means that we have to pull together as Parliament so that we fight these inequities which are always there. Inequality, poverty, and underemployment. I think that this Parliament must ensure that you achieve that. But when you look at the strategic plan of Parliament, it is precisely because the ultimate outcome it wants in 2030 is that the unemployment, there must be improvement in the land quality of life of the people as determined by the NDP. I think that the strategic plan is correct. I think that we must stick to it. But first of all, I'd like really to appreciate the administration of Parliament when they stood up to the Treasury that they could not cut 340 million rand. Instead, the cut was around 80 million. I think it must be appreciated. But the issue then is that what happens next year? What happens if we have a weaker administrative officers? So I think here, Chairperson, is that the executive authority of Parliament must meet with the head of the executive, that is the president, so that the issue of the budget of Parliament is not treated as that of the department. To go upon, the Parliament is another arm of state, so it must be treated as such. I think that the sooner there's engagement between the executive authority plus the head of the executive, that is the president, plus the treasurer, so that the budget of Parliament is treated differently from all the other departments. Number two, Chairperson, on the issue of the budget cut itself, when you look at this 80 million, 25 million is coming from the core services of Parliament. I think that it is dangerous, because when you speak about the core service of Parliament, you speak about service delivery of Parliament itself. So yes, there was this issue that the entitlements were not used, the oversight was not done, but the issue in moving forward, if we don't strengthen the oversight of the portfolio committees, if we don't strengthen the public participation of the communities, it means that the work of Parliament will be redundant. So I think that in moving forward, we must jealously guard that those strategic objectives of Parliament of improving oversight and then improving public participation must be guarded jealously so, because if you don't do that, it means that we'll not be able to hold the government to account. I think Honorable Jesus is correct that all these objectives of fighting unemployment is with the departments. But if Parliament, the portfolio committees themselves, don't have capacity to oversee those departments, it means that we can come 2030, might come with an unfulfilled goals which we wanted. But on the other issue, Chair, is the issue of yes, the issue of parliamentary diplomacy. I think that part of parliament is to ensure that it reaches out to the other parliaments, to the other international institutions. So yes, something bad has happened. Israel is about to annex the West Bank. It's very quiet in the whole world. People of Western Sahara are still occupied. Nothing is being said. Nothing is being done. So what I really appreciate is that as we move forward with our APPs, the parliament must reach out to the people of the world, in particular those who are affected, just like the parliamentary authority, like the people of Western Sahara, because we are where we are, because the parliaments of the world took a stand. I'll make an example. The senator was responsible for imposing sanctions against the apartheid regime. He did that at the Congress level, at the Congress floor. So I think that our parliament must start being articulate and assertive, in particular around that. And then the other issue, Chair, will be the issue of, I see that the issue of participation. The people knowledgeable about the work of parliament. The only target is 24% of the population. I think it's too low. I think that we must market parliament out. And then how can we market it? I think that the executive authority has done something extraordinary, because this year, during the lockdown, we're able to deal with the petitions which were coming from the people like in the Israel. Something which was done quickly. So I think that if this parliament can be so relevant that the petitions of the people are taken into consideration quickly, and then the parliament will always remain relevant to the people. So, and then the last but not the least, Chair, is the issue of the Secretary to Parliament. I think that the executive authority, since the issue of the former Secretary to Parliament was finalized, I think the process must start now of recruiting the permanent member, because how can you hold the acting Secretary to Parliament accountable? What performance agreement does she have with the executive authority? I think that that process must start, because if the one who's heading the institution is not, it does not have performance agreement, who are we going to hold accountable if these APPs are not implemented? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Khadebe. Can I now hand over to, or give the opportunity to Honorable Khai, and you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Co-Chairperson, Speaker, and Chairperson of the NCOP. Honorable members, good morning. Let me also take this opportunity, Chair, to, I think I'm covered firstly by Honorable Khadebe on the issue of engagement between the executive authority of Parliament and the head of state with regard to the issue of resourcing Parliament, and that it should not be treated like other departments. In addition to that, is the issue of the PPO, that perhaps we should come to a finality on the issue of the PPO, that it gets its money direct rather than through Parliament. I was going to also propose that in terms of the slides, I think it's slide 14, on the MTSF outcomes, those areas that Mecha was explaining about the measure, the baseline, target of 2024 and target of 2030, whether in terms of monitoring and evaluating whether we're meeting those, whether the work of the PBO should not be extended also to monitor, because it's going to be difficult for committees, because we work separately, so we were unable then to have an impact on those measures or understanding how those measures are being met. But if you have a structure that is solely responsible to monitor and evaluate whether those measures are being met. So I was just thinking aloud whether we should not extend, therefore, the mandate of the PBO so that it also responsible for that work, as the Honorable Julius was saying, and then perhaps on regular basis, it updates Parliament with regard to meeting those objectives. Coming to the issue of the awareness of the population of the work or business of Parliament. I'm just worried now that there's this target of 23 in terms of the baseline is 23, but the target now will be 24. I think that target is very low, given what that Masondo was saying, that we are an activist parliament, we're people's parliament. Now, if we're people's parliament, but only 23% of the population knows about the business of parliament, I think it's very low, especially during this period now, where you won't have galleries, for example, where if we are debating in Parliament in the two houses, you won't have gallery of public gallery for the public to come and listen. So that target is even going to be perhaps worse. Won't be even able to achieve the 23%. But also worried about the fact that for even before I came to Parliament, Parliament has been using the DSTV platform for the public to know what is happening in Parliament. I think it's about time perhaps we consider as Parliament to use a public broadcaster for the population to be able to access information on what Parliament is doing. So, but also linked to that, Chair, is that my observation with regard to public participation or public involvement, it has been limited on public hearings around legislation and to a certain extent to petitions. Other than that, there's very little participation with regard to the public. So I was thinking that perhaps even at a level of committees, there should be a way, if, for example, the committee on transport is dealing whether with APPs or annual report, there should be a way of members of the public or stakeholders in the transport industry. There should be a way of having them not to participate, but to be part of such meeting as part of a public involvement. As well as other sectors, there should be a way of ensuring that public or even stakeholders are aware of the business of Parliament. So, Chair, those are the areas I just wanted to indicate. Thank you. But I think the last point, Chair, is on the situation we find ourselves in, and also how the work of Parliament is going to be affected. For example, we don't know now if we are to embark on oversight visit. We don't know how many staff members will be able to have with us going to those oversight visits. So there should be a way of us being informed in terms of who will be able to be available in terms of the staff, who has commodities that won't be able to be of the oversight. Even with members, which members will be, I think we need to have that information, which members will be available for physical contact work, which members won't be able to be available for physical contact work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Khai. Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, and I greet the Honourable Speaker and Honourable Chairperson of the NCOP and all my colleagues. Chairpersons, just to follow on Honourable Khai and just emphasize a couple of points that he made on media channels. There is a very great interest by members of the public, perhaps because they are at home in lockdown, in what's happening in Parliament. And we get more criticized than anything else. But anyway, criticism is good because it means they are following what's happening. But it's only those that have access to channel 408, when I'm talking about television, that are able to do that. And I think we've raised this as a committee before, of the public broadcaster, or even Parliament engaging with the public broadcaster to buy time when there are important debates or discussions taking place in Parliament, so that all communities can participate. I have a particular problem also, Honourable Chairperson, when the President makes his statement to the country, we watch on 403, 404, 405. What about the others? I know sometimes 192 broadcasts it, but I think we must look beyond now just 408 being the parliamentary channel. So I just wanted to emphasize that point. But secondly, Chairperson, when we look at this APP and we get this presentation, and as we got the presentation on the strategic plan, it's going through a legislative process that one has to, in terms of the Act, table a plan by a certain time, then do your strat plan, get it approved, look at it for 5 years. But we know this is a moving target. And your annual performance plan cannot be annual anymore. We'll have to look at more regular intervals of getting reports from the ASTP and the Executive Authority, perhaps every 3 months or 6 months, of where we are in terms of these plans. But having said that, Honourable Chairperson, they say you must look for a seed of a hidden opportunity in every adversity. And I think the opportunity has presented itself to us now as Parliament to re-look at our budget. Now, to re-look at our budget in such a way that we see what savings we have made and how we can, maybe in a year or two, not talk about shortfalls in our budget, but utilize the savings to balance our budget moving forward. And I think that is possible. For example, yes, we are spending more money on IT, and I congratulate the Secretariat at all levels and IT department for coming of age. I think we've really come of age from March to now in terms of ensuring that the business of Parliament continues in terms of the Constitution. They've done extremely well. But so we will need money for PPE and all sorts of other things. But at the same time, we are saving on travel. Parliament, how much, I don't know if the ASTP or the Financial can tell us how much we've saved in the last 3-4 months on members' travel, on members' claims, because they're not claiming. I know we've asked for a concession that those members who are traveling now to their constituency offices, which we all doing, there's a method of us being able to claim for that travel. So I don't know if that has been processed by the Executive Authority, but there was a plan. So how much has been saved? In terms of catering, there's no catering taking place. And I would be very interested, maybe as we move forward, in writing to be told, we insourced catering. It was an outsourced function that was provided before, service that was provided. What savings are we making, firstly, between insourcing and outsourcing? And secondly, within the insourcing, what savings have we made in the last 3 months as far as catering is concerned? So the other issue that I want to pick up from Honourable Khai is the one about the PBO and the role of the PBO. Honourable Speaker and Honourable Chairperson of the NCOP, we heard the Minister of Finance talk about zero-based budgeting. Now, zero-based budgeting means we start from scratch. You start as if we're starting Parliament new for the first time, because normally we are used to incremental budgeting. You just add 5% here, 8% there, 3% there, etc., etc. Is Parliament working with the PBO now thinking aloud of how we would put a budget on our table as if we were starting from brand new? This is 1994. We are starting Parliament for the first time. What will we require in our budget? What line items, what programs, etc. And I think this is something we have to do, because we are going to be asked about this by Treasury in due course is what are we doing in regard to zero-based budgeting. But Chairperson, like I say, we'll have to meet more regularly, and I want to thank the presiding officers and everybody, for the way we've been doing things so far. I know some political parties pronounce publicly, Parliament is not meeting, Parliament is not doing, but yet they're participating in our debates, they're voting for, they're voting against, they're taking points of orders. So Parliament is functioning. But I personally can't see us being a full complement until even next year, the beginning of next year. And what is our thinking and plans for that? Because, this virus is really something we cannot predict. So those questions that I've asked, and then we can take it. Thank you very much, Jefferson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. Honorable Maotwe, you next.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and greetings to the two speakers and the Secretary to Parliament. I've got a couple of questions and concerns on the presentation that has just been made. And I'm going to speak more finance language than political because we're in the finance portfolio committee meeting. So the first thing is, Chair, if you look at, and I think it's slide number 7, where it shows the reduction. And if you look at all these programs, the first number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, what has been done here is just to reduce by 3.6%, all of them. So what does it tell me? It tells me that there's no intelligence that was applied here, because it would not make sense for me to cut down strategic leadership and governance by 3.6%, and the same goes to core business 3.6%, and the same to associated services. So it doesn't give me comfort and confidence that really we applied our mind. We just went and boom, 3.6% across the board, giving us an overall deduction of 2.9%, moving from 2.687 to 2.607. So I want to appeal to the people who came up with this presentation to say they need to do more. It will not make sense. There's no catering right now. There's no water being given in Parliament. There's not high maintenance services that have been conducted. I agree with the speaker that we need to put more money on capacitating our ICT, particularly the infrastructure side, because that's where we're going. There's no traveling that's been done. I mean, for the period March to April, or rather April, March to May, which is the last month of the previous financial year and the first 2 months of this financial year, there was a complete shutdown. We were on lockdown level 5, where possibly only the executive were the ones who were traveling. So that has contributed drastically to the reduction that I'm not seeing here on this budget. We are now on the 4th month of the lockdown, and very few people have been traveling. Very few people have been in Parliament, meaning there have been very few water being circulated, the tissue, the maintenance, and all those things. I do not see them featuring in here. All I see here is 3% across the board, which gives a total reduction of 2.6% on each and every program. Now, the other one is, I agree that, and I support the demand for increase in the ICT infrastructure, as I said, and I agree that this COVID is going to force us to do things differently and force us to be more efficient than we were before, and that is on slide number 8. Chair, I'm trying to move slide by slide so that I don't waste your time. So if you look at slide number 8, it could cause process disruptions. Of course, COVID has caused disruptions everywhere, in every sector. Starting from home, it caused disruptions, and we welcome it. We must change, because COVID has caused disruptions, and we must adapt new ways of doing things. That's why we see us even having this platform online. And then I like the fact that we recognize and realize that this has forced this institution to greater efficiency. And we have not been doing very well, I must say, Speaker, and chair. But I appreciate the fact that we can see that this pandemic has shown us that we need to do more. Also, if you look at my greatest concern, also goes to goods and services. Each and every program, you've got goods and services budget there. And this is where I get very concerned, because once you say goods and services, what is goods and services? If you look at program 1, you've got 22,012 towards goods and services. P2, you've got 44,729 towards goods and services. P3, you've got 164,115 towards goods and services. P4, you've got 100,277 towards goods and services. P5, you've got 120,000. And when you add them together, they are 451,133 when you add them together, which makes it 16.67% of the budget. So we're sitting with 16.6%. We reduced the budget by only 3.6% per program, translating into 2.6 across the board. But here we've got goods and services, which is sitting at 16.67%. And when you ask what is goods and services, it's not clear, it's not outlined anywhere. So there's something fishy here. We need to open up this goods and services and understand what is it that you are offering on these goods and services that is beyond just what has been outlined. And about, I see the speaker is doing something. You can't hear me.
You were disturbed towards the end, but now you're fine.
Oh, okay. So maybe let me start with.
Throughout the time we have had everything. Just now.
Okay. Okay. So before my let me then wrap up on the goods and services. I'm saying we've seen a reduction of 3.6% per program, which translated to 2.6 overall. But when you come to goods and services, you've got 16.6% of the budget going towards the goods and services as you add them per program. And for me, that's where I'm concerned, because 16.6% of the budget is way too high if you compare it to what has been reduced. So we need to break it down to say, what is this goods and services that we're talking about? And I was saying then, I agree with one of the speakers who came and said, we are a state arm, and we ought to support our own state-owned entities. So I support the move that says, let's remove Parliament channel from DSTV. Let's go to SABC, and SABC gives us that platform. And that will also even help the poorest of the poor who do not afford to pay for DSTV. So in reaching out, the outreach program by Parliament, you are then bringing the very ordinary people to be able to listen to you, including even the radio. There could be poor people who can't even afford to buy TV. But if you provide this platform, even on the radio, that will be a highly appreciated, Chairperson. And allow me then to end it there for now and say to the team, we've got to really think outside the box. The 3.6% across the board is totally unacceptable, considering the fact that majority of the things we're not doing. In actual fact, this budget of Parliament should actually be drastically reduced, and the money should be reprioritized to programs or departments such as Department of Health, Department of Social Development in terms of providing food and PPE to our ordinary people, capacitating state-owned entities like Transnet to be able to manufacture all these PPEs that are going to be needed, as cubicles that are going to be needed in the schools. So let's reprioritize this money and take it back there. And finally, Chair, I've seen, and I'm worried, because when we keep on allowing people to go to Parliament, it means they're still traveling, there's still water and all those things. But more than anything else, then it means that every week we then need to disinfect parliament buildings. Why can't the speaker, honorable speaker, my home mama, is from my she's from my province. So why can't we then say everybody must stay at home, like me and her? The speaker has not been to parliament ever since the president announced the lockdown. So me and her have contributed drastically to the reduction of unnecessary costs. So the unnecessary costs are just over and above the traveling, but they are also in terms of parliament being disinfected, because you're going to need a service provider that disinfects that building now and then. Let's allow parliament staff to go to parliament on a skeletal basis. They can rotate. They must still maintain the regulations as it relates to the number of people that can be in the offices. And all members of parliament must stay at home and attend parliament through the visual platform. We try to lobby and said, let it come to Pretoria. This is not the platform. Otherwise, I would have loved to push that one. But I'm saying, in the absence of us meeting in Pretoria, let's use the platform. Let's force our members of parliament to use platform so that we can save on water and toilet paper and anything else that includes disinfection and all that. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The next member is Honorable Lesoma.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and good morning to the EAs and both co-chairs and colleagues, and thank you for the opportunity. Probably let me quickly say that without repeating myself from what other colleagues have said, that I am covered on the issue of the Secretary to Parliament, on the issue of also using other media, new media platforms, but also taking into account that our communities, they tend to compete with their basic household needs in terms of buying data. How moving forward, not necessarily to incorporate in this revised plan, but moving forward to have that dual participatory democracy methodology that we can apply, if it can be looked at moving forward. The other one, Chair, that I would like to raise in terms of which is more in relation to members' capacity building or training, let me use that word, that NSG, I understand that is in a process of engaging Parliament to have an MOU to train, to capacitate members. And I would like to know, not necessarily now, probably in writing, how far are we with that, using both the contact training and e-training, as it were. Other than that, I'm really covered, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The last member on my list, Tim. The platform is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to leave my camera off if that's okay. My signal is not the greatest. Chair, just a couple of points. First of all, I'd like to thank the research staff for the document they prepared for us for this meeting. You know, I always reflect that research staff should not be summarizers of documents. Can you hear me, Chair?
We can. You are very much clear.
All right, great. Thank you. Research staff should not be summarizers of documents. You know, we can all summarize a document, but researchers should go to a deeper level in terms of analyzing data and giving us the information. And in this case, they have. But I must say, I've seen a gradual decrease from the 5th Parliament to now, when we get so-called research documents from our researchers that are literally just taking a 100-page document and summarizing it down to 20. We don't need summaries. We need in-detail research. But on this occasion, I'd like to thank them, the staff that have done this. I get concerned about one of the issues that's raised in the research document about the policy priorities and when they are due to be realized and our evaluation of them. And I just want to make a solid proposal here. The current policy priorities of the 6th Parliament are due to be realized in 2024, which means that the 7th Parliament will only be able to evaluate them, not this committee. So that evaluation of the policy priorities of this Parliament has to be brought forward or we need to monitor it, and I fall in line here with Honourable Singh, that we cannot have these distant policy priorities that don't allow us to evaluate them. That also falls into line, if you look at the 6th Parliament's, sorry, the 7th Parliament priority, sorry, the 6th Parliament's priority, strategic priorities is set to be realised in 2030, which means that not even the 7th Parliament will be able to evaluate that. And so I just want to call on this committee to consider that our researchers give us even a biannual review of where we are in terms of policy priorities and strategic priorities with a 2-strand approach. In other words, this is the priority, this is where we are. In other words, deep research. So we can really monitor as we go along how we're getting towards those, because to leave them to the end of the term or end the date when they're set to be realized is a complete and utter waste of time. Then I'd just like to address the issue of petitions with a simple example. Our petition system at the moment seems to be a mechanism that is largely forgotten, and it seems to be a tick box mechanism. And I'll give you an example, Chair. We have a petition. I submitted a petition in October, November last year with COGTA to look at water issues in the Underberg area of KwaZulu-Natal. That item is only now on the Z list in July the following year, and is set to be discussed by the committee, the select committee, at some point in the future, probably only in the next term of this year, which will probably only be in late August, early September. So it's almost 1 year after that petition was submitted that we're now only considering it and considering the input of that community. A petition, by its very nature, comes up as a source of immediate concern. Parliament cannot be sitting in a position where we sit a year later still considering the issue surrounding the petition 10 months ago. We really have to work on how petitions can be fast-tracked, because petitions generally come in because of a specific issue. We can't wait a year to deal with them. That's really Parliament needs to, I think, pull up its socks on that. I support Honourable Singh about the public broadcasting and Honourable Khai. We've got to work out a way to do that. This is the People's Parliament, after all. It is the People's Parliament. And at the moment, it's the digital elite Parliament who can afford DSTV. And that's not right. We've got to get this onto the SABC somehow. Then we, and you also have other, newer guys like Newsroom Africa and that sort of thing. I'm sure that there are news outlets who would love to open a second channel and have Parliament on it to pull people to them. There are opportunities out there, I'm quite sure. Before I get on to my final point, Chair, something that affects you as well as me is the complete lack of silence from our service providers, WITS, relating to many of our studies. And I'm informed by Matlodi Nawa that the problem is not our applications, it's just a complete lack of silence, complete silence from the side of WITS. I don't know if it's the same with NSG. I haven't engaged Mr. Mavuso, but if he is on this platform, I really ask him to look into it. There are many members who'd like to continue their studies at WITS, and we're just running into a wall of silence from WITS side. And I raise this, Chair, because the provincial legislatures are engaging. They are doing all their stuff. There's clarity on what's going on with the provincial legislatures, but we are the mother body, and we're getting nothing. It's crazy. Finally, Chair, I just want to raise a slightly sensitive point, but it comes down to the core of business. This is the most important point I'm making. The core of Parliament's business. The core of Parliament's business is oversight over the executive. But right now, and I know this is sensitive, but right now we are sitting in a situation where a cabinet is running the country and are making daily laws that we, as members of Parliament, and I'm sure we all hold that duty sacredly, it is close to our hearts, we have no oversight whatsoever over the diktats that are being issued on a daily basis. We have to seriously consider as parliamentarians whether or not this is serving the interests of our people. At the moment, and I'm not talking about the current COVID-19 situation, seriously, we have a small executive making the laws and we have no insight into it. We act defensively all the time. So when a new regulation comes out, we either support it or we criticize it, but we have no input at all into its formulation. And I really think that is a massive area of concern for this Parliament to consider. Surely we should have some form of input in terms of regulations before they go out. And at the moment, it's a matter of having committee meetings and select committee meetings where ministers explain their actions, they get criticized, and we move on. But there's no interaction whatsoever before anything is done. And I think that is a massive problem, that we're not getting that normal portfolio committee, select committee input on any form of law before it is actually passed. That is the normal process. That is what keeps our country together. But at the moment, that's currently being eroded. It is a massive source of concern for me and many others. And I really think we need to have, it's not something for our staff to answer on this and for the Secretary of Parliament to answer on this platform, but it really is something that we should really be concerned about. And it doesn't matter who's in government. It is a fundamental constitutional principle. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the time.
Okay, before I let you go, Honorable Tim, I don't know if I'm the only one who wants clarity on the passing of the laws that you're talking about. Are you talking about the regulations for COVID-19?
Yes. Yes, Chair, I'm talking about the regulations. Now, the point is that every month, the National Disaster Management Act allows the Cabinet to renew the period. Now, we understand that that's in compliance with the legislation, but the problem is that can continue every month and every month and every month. We could be a year from now, and still we have no insight into how regulations are made or come up with. I just think, let's ignore the personalities, let's ignore all the media hype, all the political parties shouting and screaming, and think of it as parliamentarians as a simple constitutional principle. It is really, really dangerous. And I think all of us need to reflect on it, and let's forget the fact that the ANC is in government and the DA is in opposition and the IFP is in opposition. It's a serious constitutional issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Co-Chairperson. Honorable Mabi.
She was struggling to come in. Continue.
She did indicate she's struggling with her network today. Honorable members, I was of the opinion initially that we will be able to get a second bite after the responses, because today we are with the executive. We need to say what we always say, go out of this meeting having an understanding, having satisfaction in as far as the questions that we have raised. But unfortunately, because we were emphasizing and re-emphasizing on issues that other members have raised, we don't have the luxury of time. Remember, we are allocated 3 hours for a session, because we have to give other committees an opportunity also to connect. So, Honorable Chairperson, I'm the chairperson, the co-chairperson is not here. Honorable members, honorable members, and the executive. The most important thing for me is the tracking system. We have tried to speak about it, and Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, I've engaged you because the committee that I'm sharing, we have tried to establish it and we are trying to make follow-ups, more especially on resolutions that have been taken in the House. The implementation of those resolutions, that it should not be that we just take resolutions for the sake of resolution. We need to be informed in as far as the impact of the resolutions that we are taking, how far are they implemented. But I was advised that this is the prerogative of the executive, but we have had an agreement and an arrangement in the NCOP. But now that we are in this joint committee of parliament, I think it's something that we need to flip over it and think about it. That committees, as we say, we hold the executive and the department accountable. We oversight on them, we take resolutions, and those resolutions, if they are adopted in the House, they need to be implemented. So I'm just also following the members, re-emphasizing on that, is that it has been a very serious problem for me. I will also want to welcome the strategy, the communication strategy from Parliament, because I'm not disagreeing with the members with the initiatives that they are proposing, but I think they have done something. They are improving on making sure that we reach out. I think we have other platforms, YouTube, we have Facebook Live, where communities can be able to access. But it will also depend on your economic status, whether you are able to access through those platforms. But there's a room for improvement, and I support the members on those issues. The issue of the oversight, I'm very skeptical. Chairperson, executive members, I'm not responding, and Ms. Jawa, I'm not responding on your behalf, but I believe that if an issue is raised, it needs to be debated, because I feel different about that issue. The issue of oversight, I think the president, when he announces our operation and our behavior during lockdown, it was clear. So if we are to say members of parliament must go to sites to do oversight, whereas we see the peak at which we are, how safe is that? How safe is that to the members or to the institutions that we are going to oversight? I'm just skeptical about that. I believe that the situation that we are in now is abnormal, and we need to treat it as such. For the last time, Honorable Chair and Speaker, we have raised this to the management of Parliament. The issue of the tools of trade. It is difficult now that we are working from home for the secretaries. Hence, I was sharing with the other members that I'm booked, I'm triple booked today, because they are using only phones. So it is difficult to work from home when they don't have laptops, if I have to be specific, among other things. So those are the issues that I want us to check. And the issue of PBO and the secretary, I support it. We are losing quality in those offices like the PBO, because there's no certainty. They are uncertain about the future. So we are really appealing that let's fast track the issue of making sure that there's stability, there's leadership in the PBO, and also in Parliament. In the NA, the Secretary of Parliament. So let's try to fast track those issues, because it is also frustrating the person who's acting, because she has been acting for a long time. And when you act, sometimes it's difficult to take unpopular decisions because you are not sure of your future. Chairperson, honorable members, I will leave it at that and request the administration, which is led by Ms. Jawa, to respond, and then the executive will come after. Major.
Thank you. Thank you indeed, Chairperson. My colleagues are also going to assist me with that. Let me start off with your point. I think the division manager will continue to check, because as far as we know, all executive secretaries have been allowed to take their desktops. As of yesterday, I was signing off close on 170 Wi-Fi boosters for those who will need Wi-Fi so we can load data. Some have laptops, some have desktops, and we've allowed it. Some of the support to committees, we even allowed them to take the chairs, because they came complaining that where they are at, they sit for a long time. The division managers, they will then monitor those who do not have support. It's important that we provide support. And we have a very systematic way. We sort out the asset forms, and people definitely do take their laptops. But we will continue to look at that. The issue of the tracking system, honorable members, indeed there is a resolution tracking tool. I know for a fact from my colleagues that last year already they had presented it before COVID to the ICT Steering Committee, which is chaired by Honorable Nyambi and Honorable Frolic. So that's an area that needs to be picked up very quickly and sort of extended and made reliable. Let me start from Honorable Julius then. I didn't get the question about the members' facility. It would be useful maybe if Honorable Julius could just write that maybe on the chat group so we see. But if there's anybody who could understand what he was saying, I'll be glad to listen. I agree with Honorable Julius that the reason we've put the outcomes on the strategy for the 6th Parliament, it's correct. It means now members, you then have your APP over Parliament's work and oversight on the executive. What we need to do, and I think Honorable Julius is correct, we need to sort out the criteria around which you're going to measure reduction of poverty, increase of employment, creation of jobs or environments to generate jobs. There's a lot of other products outside. The Afrobarometer studies that does a 2-year study on democracies that function have got such. So that tool can happen. But this will mean that the research unit can actually start developing indicators or criteria, let me put it, criteria that will inform indicators, and that criteria will constitute sub-indicators that measures poverty. And of course, what we did in our strategy was to look at the Gini coefficient, which is an international standard of reduction of poverty. Then of course, we have to talk about reduction of inequality. And it means the Parliament the members have to have their indicators themselves, but those must be crafted by members themselves. And what I'm hearing from this committee is that we need to assist, and researchers can actually do that. And of course, the use of PBO, I agree completely, because they can begin to refine exactly where the budget is going in terms of the expenditure of the whole of the departments and where it should be going, given the growth trajectory and so on. So my sense is that using the resources of the PBO and the research in Parliament, we can start proposing that. And I know colleagues have been trying to work on that now. And I agree completely. It will assist members to say, is this what you are adopting as Parliament? Because that's where Parliament will have to report. We report the manner in which we support you. Then Parliament has to report out of the oversight that they've exercised to say, indeed, the budget drivers, as approved by us through the APPs, are addressing poverty in this country in this manner and that manner. Then there's an increase of skills in this manner and that in that way. So I think it's an area that we definitely will look at and work with this committee, which definitely is an oversight of all of Parliament's work, including the impact of oversight exercise. On the matter of the, let me see, Honorable Khadebe, you spoke about the arm of state. We agree with it, and we have actually spoken about it a lot. You spoke about parliamentary diplomacy. I think that's the discussion this committee will have to have in respect of the emerging patterns of alliances in the world. The awareness too low, yes. I agree. Honorable Khadim has spoken to awareness that's too low, and Honorable Khai. Yes, what we've done, because we've depended on outsourced surveys, the outsourced survey will obviously come a year later. What we have agreed to as officials is there's real-time data that we can collect. I think members are aware of the SurveyMonkey system, wherein we are able to collect real-time data. The first thing is obviously on levels of satisfaction. The second one is the PCS, the Parliamentary Communication Service. What we don't have, which we will show you when we bring the reports, because remember, honourable members, this was just a report that says to you, here are the indicators for 2020-21. We're going to come back and report on how each one of those indicators have been met. So with respect to the surveys, we do an annual survey, but what we haven't done, which we should do, we must show you on a quarterly basis those who access YouTube, and there is an increase in percentage. We will even disaggregate it into an age cohort. We will disaggregate it into levels of education. We'll use those variables, because then it will show you the targets and the people that we meet in terms of them accessing the information of Parliament, because not all people access 408. We agree, the platform thereof. And I do want to say, honourable members, this is a free channel. We don't pay a cent for it. It's a CSI contribution to Parliament. In addition to that, the Speaker and the Chair have been saying we need to have at least a parliamentary broadcast, and that's a project that we've started working on now. Going forward, we will actually expand the reach by such platforms. But I want to say, when we report, we'll give you a breakdown of YouTube access, we'll give you a breakdown of our social media, Twitter, and so on. And this is an area where PCS, under Moloto and Shelley are actually responsible for. We'll provide you those data, and we'll provide the detail in between whilst we're waiting for the research. Indeed, the research, we can put 24% on our members, but we were just working it out. If we look at 24% of the population of 51 million, it means Parliament at least reaches 12.5 million. But if you look at the research, they only research people from 16 years upwards, so that's about 30 million of the population. So we're talking 24% of that to 30 million, which is even slightly higher. We are not saying it's a silver bullet, but what those surveys do, they provide the South African Parliament credible data that can show that people are able to access Parliament to this level. They have information on Parliament. It doesn't mean we should not improve on it. And I'm saying we will collect in between data to show you the various platforms and what people access. What colleagues are doing now through PCS, they are now working with Centec to feed into the 70 community radio stations where we receive or we target about 20 million people, potentially, I think 30 million listeners throughout the country. So the PCS is now working through Centec and ensuring that our information and our communication reaches the majority of the people, the most of the people. What also is critical, honorable members, our communication has also scheduled that all the chairpersons of committees must avail themselves for a structured program that they will start very soon once their OPP is ready, to schedule 1 hour interviews, talk show, Q&A. Normally it's done once a week, 1 hour on a Thursday. I do not know what the situation is like now. But once we invest in the Centec and get a satellite for the community radio stations, we're able to schedule those. So we're going to be asking for a lot of you to profile yourselves, not yourselves personally, but the work of Parliament through such platforms. So we're expanding our platform, and we will bring in data in terms of the people we reach, so that we don't do it anecdotally and only around events. So that's one on awareness. The Honorable Singh, you spoke on the savings. Yes. With respect to insourcing, outsourcing, I must say, remember when we insourced, we had to inherit people permanently who were paid by Bidvest. So So meaning that we had to find budget to provide salaries for a full-time watrons, and meaning that there was no savings, not at all. The only time we're beginning to see the generation of income is when we were now buying our own stock, and through Ms. Zungo, being able to manage the point of sale, take audits of what we buy, and beginning to generate some self-generated income by selling and charging. That is why members at some stage, remember, I made a presentation on the fact that the price of catering is going to increase in the restaurants, and some members were quite unhappy about it. But that was an element of trying to generate our own income. So currently, and CFO can, if we have anything, we had to defray so we're able to pay people. And on our members, remember when you took over the insourcing of caterers, we did not pay them at the level that Bidvest was paying them, because indeed we were told that those were slave salaries, and we improved the pay thereof. So we invested in order to have money later, and it is a long-term investment. I agree with Honorable Singh what we'll do. Even the Executive Authority has asked that we must come back to look at areas within which we are saving. And this is similar to what Honorable Moate was saying. We are going to show the various percentages of savings against catering, which is not happening, again, because this is what I'm presenting now. It's not expenditure. What I'm presenting to the committee, it is that I am saying, be reassured that the part has not necessarily impacted on the set targets. However, some targets we've had to revise, and I'm saying in this presentation, the targets of 2020 as presented May last year have not changed. So that's what I'm saying. And what we are saying is that we're going to come and make a presentation of the expenditure. We're going to make a presentation of performance that will then show you the shifts and the non-shifts against the allocated budget per activity as emerging from the OPP. So we will show you that, Honorable Wate, and you will note that there's definitely we applied our minds when we even did the reductions thereof. We didn't just cut off 3%, we worked out what is it that each of the division managers had asked for last year, what is it that we can reduce, and how can we reduce it around which item. So we did some thorough analysis, and we'll provide you with the information in the next presentation where we show you the shifts in the budget. We will not give you a global figure. As of now, you're just looking at the global figure, and under that, there is a breakdown thereof. With respect to zero budgeting, we do zero budgeting. We've been doing zero budgeting for 4 years now. What the FMO does on an annual basis before the budget begins, they provide us they ask us to make sure that we have something called the cost of commodities. So each time, much as we haven't sharpened that, each time we don't build it by 1%, above 1%, and above 1%. We have what we call cost of commodities, okay? This also assists so that nobody rips us off, at least for as long as we pay attention. Nobody rips us off and sells us a ream of paper for 100 rands, which may be 25 rands. So on our members, we apply our minds to that. We've done zero budgeting from the time of former Secretary Kengezi. We don't accept it when colleagues come and give us an increment. They must know what is the cost of the air flight this year. The intersection will do that. Ms. Beck's session will do that. What is the cost of flights? What is the cost of expenditure on kilometers? The colleagues sit down when they do their operational plans, and they definitely don't just do an increment from one. So it will not be a crisis with respect to when we have to report on what were the basis on which we actually developed some part, on which we costed our OPP. What possibly would be a challenge, Honorable Singh, is we've been for a while, and I think this will belong to the scenarios. If you were to ask us, and the Executive Authority Speaker and Chair, what does it cost South Africa to exercise oversight? If you were to ask us that, we may not be able to give you a figure, But we may give you a figure of this oversight needs this particular communications person, this is how much it costs outside the salary. Oversight for you to travel to this place, this is how much it costs. This committee has costed that. However, we know when committees like the NCOP committees, whom we engage with just this year on the plans for their oversight, we were sitting with them and they were looking at, this is what we want to do. This is the type of engagement, multilateral, bilateral that we want to go to. This is what it will cost us. So we have that, you know, and if just having the basis will help us, Honorable Singh, to deal exactly with what you're talking about. Because once we know what is the cost of oversight and what is the cost of democracy in South Africa, we will be able to say, indeed, the budget is deficient in this area and that area, and that should we definitely, we need to actually do a zero budgeting at this level. But I can reassure you, we do zero budgeting. We will do the scenarios in as far as what if things change. What is it that needs to be done? What are the risks we don't know? We were saying to the executive authority that what we need, which we are doing, is a risk, an institutional risk plan, which has got mitigation processes that we can put together and say, in COVID, we have now, we know the risks, but post-COVID, what is going to be the institutional risks that will be will impact the budget and also on performance. I'm going to ask CFO if he wants to talk about a little on the reduction of the budget, but before that, I will talk to the tracking system. I have spoken with the trackers about the tracking systems, and then I've spoken about the goods and services and what Honorable Mate was saying. I've also spoken about the zero budgeting. NSG, quickly, Honorable Isoma, yes, we have submitted a memorandum of understanding to a draft one, let me say, to NSG. And obviously that memorandum will have to look at the type of training courses, but I must say upfront that there has been a partnership in the past between the sector and the NSG. What's going to be important is how are we going to be able to make sure that the modules and the costs of NSG reflect the needs of the members as discussed in the multi-party plans that you had, NCOP plans, and also the NA multi-party plans that inform the strategy and the policy priorities. We will definitely look at that, because what we don't want is just a program developed by NSG. We have to develop our own program, be working with the members. Members have to be happy with what's sitting in the curriculum before we commit ourselves to programming training with the NSG. In addition to that, research is also looking at an MOU, which we already had drafted when Hadile Khotla was still the statistician general. We were looking at that type of partnership with Stats SA to assist with the data that they do when they do the household surveys and surveys on poverty, surveys on employment, because Stats SA is a repository and a custodian of data in South Africa, and they can also assist with what members were asking about, what criteria and what indicators do we put to assess the reduction of poverty, having observed and having oversighted the implementation of the APP from the very departments through the select committees and the portfolio committees. PBO, Honorable Khai, it is, I've always said it, for the past 3 years that I've reported to this committee, I've always said the PBO was never funded. And it's going to be important. Indeed, the timing is not good. It is going to be important for Parliament and the Advisory Council that is articulated so well in the Act to really start activating and maybe talk to the Executive Authority on how we get around the work of the PBO and make sure that it isn't compromised as is. I think I've covered a lot of the other things. Honorable Singh, you asked about the infrastructure. There is indeed people who are currently on the precinct. Fortunately, some of us do go to the precinct. We have about, I think we've got 10 or so service providers on the precinct who are proceeding with the renovation. We have our doctor that's coming on the precinct We have our HR who is also coming to the precinct for wellness. We have internal audit who also is coming because of the audit. And then we've got the financial FMO colleagues who are coming onto the precinct. And of course, most important, we have our security colleagues that are coming on the precinct because the precinct has to be secured. The servers have to be secured. We've got our ICT colleagues who have to be coming to the precinct. Remember when we do the hybrids, and the hybrids that have been very successful. And we've had 448 virtual meetings to date. We've had, I don't know how many virtual meetings, I'm sure Masibu can remind us, hybrid meetings that have gone very well. A lot of it, colleagues have to come to the precinct, and we as officials have to go to the precinct. Of course, we've got a compliance officer. We've got two compliance officers, Ms. Zungu and Mr. Mukonyane. They work very closely with the occupational and health section, make sure that we have our sanitizers there and PPE there given. So we definitely are doing that work as would have been expected. I think I'm done with most of the matters, but a lot of what members were talking about is the biggest challenge, Chair, is how are we going to conduct our public participation in the manner that enables Parliament to make sure that people access the information and the work they do. To date, though, Parliament has been profiled very well. We get our daily monitoring reports from communications, and we can see how many platforms have people accessed. The biggest challenge we have, almost done, Chair, the biggest challenge we have, obviously, is to allow more and more people. I think members do know, in some of the select committees and portfolio committees, there was public that wanted to engage, and they had to be cautioned to say no. At the level of them, they cannot engage at the portfolio committee because they wanted to engage some respective departments on their APPs at that level. Can I ask CFO to come in? Mr. Nkuna, if I have left anything, please come in on the budget cuts. And yeah, I think that the vets matter, before I finish, the vets matter, Honorable Team, please allow us to have a discussion with Mr. Mavuso and find out exactly what the issues are around vets and the UJT, because to date, they would have to, it would have been useful actually to have those universities already putting their programs on their platforms. And please also talk to Honorable Julius's point about slide 25, which shows increase for members' facilities of almost 75%, projections of 21-22, Joe. Chairperson, thank you very much for allowing me enough time to explain, but my CFO will come in to clarify settlements. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Secretary, and good morning, co-chairs and honorable members. I think the first question I'll address is the 3.5% cut across the board on all the programs as per slide number 7. Honorable members, if you can see, slide 7 is only on the appropriated budget which we receive from National Treasury. As Acting Secretary indicated, initially they wanted to reduce our budget by 346. So after various discussion and engagement, we agreed on 80%. But from there, we had to indicate how much they will cut from each program for them to be able to publish on the ENE. If you recall, on the ENE, it's only one page for Parliament. They are even saying that is the recommendation because the executive authority must go back to appropriate the budget for Parliament. This is not the appropriation. This is the money we get from National Treasury. Here we're just indicating how much was cut per each program from the money we receive from National Treasury. From there, we had to add.
Sorry, excuse me, Mr. Nkuna. Is it possible that you can switch your video on because the meeting is live?
All right, thanks. I'll switch it on text. Thanks. I was saying this amount here is what we got from National Treasury. From there, we had to add our own revenue in terms of Section 16 of the Act. We also had to add donor funding to come to the amount appropriated by National Treasury. The risk of showing the amount which has been cut from the only program 1, because most of our bulk of the budget reduction was from program 5, associated services. The issue with National Treasury, their budget is on incremental basis. If we have shown all the cuts maybe on 1 or 2 programs, that will affect the baseline going forward. So which means even next year, that budget will be reduced by the same percentage. So here we're just making the same percentage reduction, so that if next year things go back to normal, there's no cut, at least each program will be reduced by a certain amount. But if you can check on slide number, I think slide number 11, which now indicate the total appropriated budget which has been approved by the executive authority. It has got 2705 instead of 2605. That 2605 is the money we get from National Treasury. And if I have to indicate the reduction in terms of the appropriated amount, before the COVID special adjustment budget, where the budget was reduced by 80 million, the initial budget for program 1 was 112.216 million. After the budget reduction, is remained at 112.166. In fact, it went up by 50,000. If you recall in that slide number 7, the budget for program 1 is 121, but here is 112, what has been allocated. As Parliament is on zero-based budgeting, each office must go to their operational plans and indicate how much they need for the financial year. Then program 2, the budget was 176, it has been reduced by 3.16% to 180. It was 182, it has been reduced by 3.16% to 176. Program 3, which is core services, the budget was 720, it has been reduced by 11 million or 1.53% to 709. The bulk of the reduction was from associated services, where the budget was 780. Then it was reduced by 60 million or 7.69 to 720. As I indicated, if we have given National Treasury these amounts, they could have reduced their budget for associated services by 60% or 7.69, which will be a problem going forward with the baseline. Well, that will affect the baseline going forward. It won't be only for this year. That's why maybe the mistake we have made here, we should have also indicated the budget reduction on the appropriated budget instead of, because they will only show the money we got from National Treasury. The other question I want to respond is on the goods and services. Yes, goods and services in terms of the budget constitute 16.5%. What we can do, we'll give the members the breakdown of all what is constituted goods, because to me that will be members' facilities, travel allowance, committee work, anything which is not compensation of employees. And to me, that figure is not high. What is high in terms of budgets, in Parliament's budget, is the compensation of employees. What we'll do, we'll submit a breakdown to see from the 460 goods and say what are all the line items. We'll submit that breakdown. There was a question on slide number 20. I can't remember that question, etc., about the budget for associated services, whether it has been reduced by 25%. As indicated here, I think that's the slide number 25. The budget for members' facilities before the reductions, it was 200 million for members' facilities. Then members' facilities came back to us after we said we were to reduce the budget. And they said that my budget must be reduced by 60%. That's where now it came to 120 instead of 200. I think I've answered all the questions, honorable members.
Thank you so much. That's the acting secretary, acting CFO, chairperson. Chairperson, if you allow me, I think the speaker and the chair would like to address the matters that as I was listening, and Honorable Tim did say that they are not administration. This is around, and also what Honorable Julius was talking about, reduction of poverty, and the fact that I think Honorable Tim was talking about why do we have 2024 evaluation, MTSF monitoring, because I think the executive authority is here to be an advantage for them to share their views, because these are matters that we as administration, when we come back, we're not able to report on yet, but I think it's something that they can give guidance on. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tawa. I think before I allowed you to speak, I did indicate that after you as administration, you have spoken.
Okay.
The executive will have to speak last, and I'm expecting that after they have spoken, there wouldn't be anyone else unless they request any of you to come. But the co-chairperson has connected. I think it will only be fair for me to allow her to say something if she does before I give to the executive. Co-chairperson Mabi. Cindy, is she disconnected again?
I think Ms. Mabe is still struggling, Ms. Mahlangu.
Oh, okay. Because I said she must the question that she wanted to raise or questions that she want to raise, she must refer them to Honorable Lisuma in case she's cut. Honorable Lisuma. Honorable Lisuma.
No, thank you very much, Chair. It's just one point that is not actually a question. Is to say that in terms of Parliament using hybrid platform, we have, speaking for myself, we have a view that says that we should be just continue doing that, and Parliament assist us as members to do our work very efficiently. Because if we don't take this posture and continue the way we're doing our business as Parliament, some of us also will come around and accuse us of closing down Parliament as in Cape Town. However, I'm saying that we will not stop to use the hybrid chair, because I am quite aware this meeting doesn't take decisions, but some of the comments that we make, because some of us were saying we've been covered, we might be misrepresented to say we have been covered by everything that has been said. Hence, I wanted to raise this issue as a matter of importance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Lisuma, for the comment. Very important one, because like Honorable Tim has said, there has been allegations outside that Parliament is not working, people are at home, and I think also Honorable Maokwe also raised it, that Parliament is working. We are hard in work. We have committees, we have decisions, we have sit-ins. It's just that we are not all of us physically there, but the operations of Parliament, the leadership is leading. They are making sure that the Parliament is running. Can we allow the Honorable Speaker and the Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, I don't know who's going to start, to have comments and responses if need be on issues that Ms. Jawa has raised. Over to you, the Executive.
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe we should start off where Ms. Lisuma ended. You will remember that when the lockdown was first muted and then announced, that we got ready to do two things. Either it was going to be an ordinary lockdown, or there was also a discussion whether or not we're going to go into a state of national disaster, or in fact a state of emergency. Now, members are saying they do research. Please go back, read the conditions under which countries, not Parliament, countries operate when you have a state of national defense, a state of emergency, and this one that we have of national disaster. The national disaster one, I think, is the softer one. So as a country, we came together, we had to suspend the way we are used to doing business. One of the first things we discussed as executive authority with the other presiding officers was, now that we have a command center on the issues of COVID and there is a national disaster, how do we ensure that those decisions, those resources are deployed in accordance with the law, the Constitution, and in protection of South Africans? When we went to programming and we went to the Chief Whips Forum, we agreed that we were going to prioritize, firstly, the committees whose ministers were directly involved in the command center work. So it is absolutely untrue that Parliament has not been working. If there is that perception there, people should ask us. Now, what is our focus in the sixth term? If you go back, during the very first weeks of the sixth term, we said we needed to sharpen capacity of the members because we were worried that over the years, the sharpness of the individual MP, the ability of the individual MP to stand on the floor of the House or take his or her space at the committee to ask those unpleasant, sharp questions to the executive, we thought was going softer. And therefore, our first focus was, how do you capacitate the MP? For us, the capacity of the MP is supported by the capacity that is found in Parliament. And therefore, the whole of the administration is solely there to help the MP to be able to focus on their job. So administration's capacity is about empowering the MP. The MP's capacity is about to represent the people out there. And that is what some of us believe for, what some of us will always fight for. So the capacity of Parliament to perform during this period is a headache that we are always grappling for. For instance, yesterday we were discussing the executive authority with the acting secretary to Parliament. How do you enable this member who now has used his and her house and her constituency to do work? How do you ensure that the data costs do not take away from the salary of this member? How do you ensure that family life is not disrupted? So we're grappling with living with COVID and living in this type of work for a longer time. We took it further because from 2014, we've been looking at the structure of Parliament. And some of us have been saying it's lopsided, it is top heavy, it doesn't really give us what we need to get as MPs. You cannot have the numbers of researchers and over-reliance of public representatives on research. You need to provide the tools to the member of Parliament to do the research, to analyze the research for themselves. So you need the researchers to give us the raw research. You don't need them to simplify the research for us because research work, it can be subjective, and we don't want that. So we want to see at the end of the sixth term a Parliament where a member is able to get in and out, do their research, speak from the floor, from the committee floor or the House floor, representing the people because they understand what they're doing. And that is why some of the structures of Parliament are getting under the microscope, because we want to know why we want to take away the powers of committees and over-delegate them into the administration and begin to make the MPs' work irrelevant. Because we do not want to be ceremonial. We want MPs who know their stories, who over the 5 years have so much capacity that they become experts in their own fields. So Parliament is getting adjusted to this hybrid mood. It is going to live with us. We know that as we get used to and more of us build more antibodies against this virus, that more and more of us will start getting to occupy our seats in both houses in Parliament. And therefore, this situation is temporary. As the levels ease, more and more members will go. Of course, the over 60s and people with comorbidities will be the last people that we expect to go unless they volunteer. So, Member Otwe, even though I agree with you, we are effective. We're on hybrid, yes, but as the situation is, so will our numbers increase, and so will we want to depend less on the hybrid platform than we will increase them. I agree, Lemema, every time I look at a budget, and maybe people who've read finances are as skeptical as Mama and I. Every time I look at a budget, and thanks God, the budgets of today no longer have an item, a line that says contingency, goods and services. Those two are very dangerous. Because unless you can really get in and look at what is purported to be represented by those two line items in budgets, you are in trouble. Because I think there is so much uncertainty covered up with goods and services that some of us are very skeptical. We want to go in goods and services and know exactly what is in there and see it tabulated so that we can say something. I'm on record, Chairpersons, that for me, Parliament must not actually go out and do anything when the executive authority, the presiding officers, have not been given a line item. If it is not budgeted for, don't expect us to do it. If it is about oversight, expect us to be creative with our budget to make sure that the members do their work. If it is about monitoring, one of the tools that we have been saying we want Parliament trained on, every committee, is on gender-sensitive budgeting. Because with gender-sensitive budgeting, you will not only pick up on issues of gender, you will look at issues of poverty, you will look at all the other geographic spread, how is the money going there? You will look at the issues of districts and villages. You will see all the three problems in front of you. So we want to say that, yes, we take it, and I'm very happy that Nkuna came back to respond to the 16%, the reductions, because also remember, over the years, the Parliament's budget has been going down. And that is why we are forced to look at the priorities, not have 7 priorities, have few priorities, and be able to execute thoroughly on those priorities. Now, Ndate team, your surname is very difficult. Broteseth is very difficult for me to pronounce your surname. But in fact, you are referring to the regulations. In our system, and in most of the parliamentary systems, the executive make the regulations. They bring bills into the House, the bills become law because we put what we want as Parliament into those bills. But they are given that latitude to make regulations. We can read regulations, we can't amend regulations. Members of Parliament must always know what they can do and what they can't do. We can criticize, we can debate, we can ask questions, but until this Parliament of South Africa decides we don't want to have regulations only being the purview and the responsibilities of the executive, we actually have a system that says they make the regulations, they report on regulations, we can only note them, we can't change them. So that is where the problem is in that. But that means that when the regulations kick in and oversight committees are working, the oversight committee has that right to ask all questions. Now, I always say, when you do oversight, forget your party colors because you divide society. Ask the question because it is in the interest of any or all constituencies out there. And that is when you will start earning respect as members of Parliament. You also say that, and I agree with you, Ndate Tim, I don't like it when administration summarizes research, because then they challenge you. Give us what is there, give us research raw, let me make up my mind and let me make my mistakes. So I want to agree with that. What we actually need is to be able to do so, to have within committees capacity to analyze whatever comes before us. the chairperson Mahlangu, if Mekyawa gives you documentation from us and says you must interact with us, also reject that. Because that is one way where we weaken the oversight and the power of Parliament. When we present papers now and we wish to be engaged on them now, because what we steal from the public representative is the ability for them to go and read, to analyze, and to come back and say, now I have considered this. So I have always been firm on that. Take your time, go through, consider, and engage. And pin us down on things when they don't agree. You have issues with them. And a member of parliament is never wrong. No question is ever important or wrong. A member of parliament must put questions to us. It is our duty, Ntate Masonto and I, to back an MP, even if that MP puts me in a corner. Because basically we are there to ensure that the people in the street are protected. There is a question that says, Eman, SABC should, the public broadcaster should be running full-time a channel on COVID-19 right now. The committees of communication should be asking the minister why we are not doing that. That is a public broadcaster. It shouldn't be running an issue which is party political, but COVID-19, all those things should be run by the SABC. We should be able to say to you, and we were clear we were going to be announcing that South African Parliament also has an independent studio. It can broadcast. We've been going around the world. We've been envying other countries smaller than us, where they have very effective TV channels and whatever. We're working on that, honorable members. We'll come back to you once we have succeeded. There is a light at the end of the tunnel on this matter. We are not using radio enough, but I do know that Bomoloto are using all the other systems okay. On the issue of our international, Ntate Peki Khatebe put this question. Ntate Khatebe, when you go into the Middle East, all the Arab countries, the speakers have a kind of body. In any IPU or CPA where the Arab countries sit, South Africa is invited. It is invited because they know the stand we take on issues of solidarity with the oppressed across the world. We will never run away from being a voice that confronts our colleagues in Israel, in Palestine, in Morocco. We will stand with those who have been oppressed because some of us, the scars are still deep. You've got two of us, the executive for committees, both of us are ex-prisoners, not because we liked it, but because we believed that the rights which we have succeeded in entrenching in our constitutions are there. And those rights cannot just be right for me and Masonto. It must be that the empathy towards the world that stood with us is out there. So yes, we stand firm. We will always do that. As a matter of fact, the speakers of Africa are coming out on debt cancellation. So expect to see us looking at an Africa, and we must have a discussion on this, because for the first time in the living memory, all of African countries are going into the recession at the same time. We must pick up on that and the impact it is going to have on us and all the other plans that we might have. Africa Free Trade, the Regional Development Cooperation, all of those things become our interest as representatives of the people. So I'm simply saying, yes, we agree with you, Ndade Becky. We must be the voice, we must represent, we must challenge, we must defend what South Africa stands for. It is non-racialism, it is non-sexism, it is doing away with poverty and discrimination within our midst and in our surroundings. And we cannot be associating with anybody who does not believe in what we believe in. On the issues, it's COVETS, the UJ. To what extent are these things that we are doing to UJ, the COVETS, impacting on the ability of members of parliament directly to hold the executive to account? Chairperson of the NCOP, I had a lousy 5 years in the last term as chairperson of the NCOP. Right at the crucial moment, I would struggle. Khai is my witness. I would struggle with a quorum because some members are sitting in Joburg at school. We have to pass bills, we have to pass the budget, and they are there. So whatever it is that we are contributing to, Parliament being the instrument to ensure that people get academic improvement, it has to be with improving the performance of the member of public to represent the public. It can't be that I am frustrated because I didn't do what I wanted to do at varsity and Parliament pays for it, and I can take leave from Parliament. I said that we are about capacitating the member to represent. So that should be our focus. But I do hear what Honorable Tim is saying. We must go and look at what is happening at VETS. I have asked to look at the curriculum. I'm not impressed. I'm an old crock when it comes to parliamentary oversight. I have written papers on this stuff. For me, it is something that you want to even engage the academics who are doing something on it. So I want more better an engagement, and the Speakers Forum has taken a decision that we actually need to launch a legislative academy where you prepare your backbencher, and I'm one of the proud backbenchers, people who are proud to say, I'm a member of Parliament, I'm not in the executive. This is what I can do. And this is what I can do even when I'm not a member. So we're looking at that and we're seeing how we can do something to do better there. Members, when we discussed with the president, firstly President Zuma and President Ramaphosa, when he was still just acting before the elections, we raised the issue of the third arm of state. We have done war even with the judiciary on behalf of the state, the third arm of state. The fact that no country in the world wants to see a strong legislative arm, that is a given. You have to struggle for that, you must get that. Our battle with the judiciary was the overreach, and we still have issues which we want to raise with the judiciary. The overreach, for instance, they take a decision and they give you a deadline which is not practical because they do not understand the parliamentary processes. So we are hearing you. We need to flex, we need to get the arm of state. And that comes back to, if we were really recognized from 1994 as a third arm of state, our budget would not be like this. We would not be expected to fight for the budget of Parliament as though we are a department. So we are there. That is a battle that we are engaging on. We are fighting. And hopefully those who will come after us will be able to say, indeed, there is an effective third arm of state. It is recognized. It gets what it should get, and it represents what it should be representing. Ntate Masonto, I don't know if I've left anything. Can you come in what I have not done? We have taken what you are saying, PBO, there must be a budget line. We have actually advertised for both. As the acting secretary said, we are looking at talent search for the secretary for Parliament. We we have had to look at a number of things, look at the weaknesses and whatever and whatever. And of course, we take it for granted that now we have amassed enough experience from 1994 to know exactly who and how a secretary to parliament must behave. Now, when it comes to the PBOs, we have done a quick scan across Africa. There is always a tension between the Secretary of Parliament and the PBO. Fact. So none of them like the PBOs. The first thing that you will get is they are being paid too much. They are professionals. They should be professional. They should be independent. They should be reporting to the presiding officers. They should be our main advisor when it comes to issues finance and economy. I want to agree, Linda Tehai, that yes, the extension must be done. They are professional, and we are hopeful that we will soon find the replacement for Professor Jahed, because we need to get that functional, we need to get that structure really getting its own budget and operating the way it should. As I say, I'm not sure what I am leaving. Ntate Masonto, do you want to come in?
Ntate Masondo, Honorable Chair.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Chairperson. I've been broadly covered. I think the Speaker has done well. It's covered many areas. Many of the points that were raised by members of the committee are really suggestions that should be taken on board, suggestions directly or indirectly. Just really two brief comments. On the question of the public broadcaster, I agree with what has been said, and I do believe that there's much more space that needs to be created for the SABC to take its work to a higher level. This includes, amongst others, for instance, the fact that given the pandemic and given the crisis, so much more can be taught on bacteria and viruses, and therefore ensure that public understanding of issues is taken to a higher level. And this includes weaknesses around the question of just introducing certain basic science related type issues. For instance, many of the beautiful programs that you see in other programs on cosmology and the planets and this and the other thing and so on can be easily made available so that the SABC really is able to play the role it is supposed to play. So I agree with what has been said, and I'm just saying that to demonstrate my point that there's a bit of space that can still be covered. On the question of rules and regulations as raised by the Speaker, I'm happy. Safe, just to emphasize that it's very important to not exaggerate and not give an impression that the country is becoming some form of dictatorship. We remain a constitutional democracy, and all we need to do going forward is to ensure that we remain vigilant. Otherwise, one really appreciates the contribution made by everybody, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Chair.
Who's that?
Mahmoudi says there's just one matter, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the petitions. Chairperson, I think Parliament, we need to have a sit down, maybe have a discussion around just one area on the petitions. You know, does a member of Parliament need to bring a petition to Parliament? The Member of Parliament has a lot of avenues. You can ask questions on the floor. You can ask questions in the committee. You can do whatever. So what is the type of petition that members of Parliament can bring? So that is a discussion I would like to get into. But also, more and more, we are finding out that there are different ways in which petitions arrive in Parliament. Some people hand petitions to members of Parliament, and these members of Parliament then take the petitions directly into the committee. We know nothing about, and therefore we cannot monitor, we cannot help. Some members write and petition Parliament. When they petition Parliament, they either send it to the NA or to the National Council of Provinces. Sometimes this petition gets lost there. It is not recorded, it is not directed, and you hear a member of the public angry out there because nothing is being done. So we do need to have a session as the administration and maybe with the committee on just how the South African Parliament must deal with the petitions. For me, when a South African petitions Parliament, it is because they have nowhere else to go. And therefore, we must take every petition that comes to Parliament very seriously. We must do what we can. We must refer it where we can. And we must also be very honest with the petitioner if what they are asking us to get involved in, we cannot. For instance, when a matter is in court or the court has finalized, we must be. But all I'm saying, Chairperson, is that we do need a discussion on how petitions arrive at and are processed by the South African Parliament. That would help, and we need to clarify it also with the public. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Speaker, Chairperson of the NCOP and the administration of Parliament. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I know that members have been complaining that we hardly have an opportunity to engage with the executive, unlike in the departments. And today is one of those days that your dreams have been fulfilled. The executive is here to clarify issues that we wanted them to clarify. And I hope that members next time will try to adjust our way of doing things, because I believe in debating issues and give members more time to engage with the leadership of the institution. So it's just unfortunate that there's other meetings that are going on. There's a plenary after that. For us in NCOP, I don't know about the NA. So members, my apologies that I could not give you second bites. I hope you will understand that we could not stretch beyond the time that is allocated to us. Can I also, before I close, can I check the co-chairperson if she wants to comment? Cindy, is she there?
No, Ms. Marbe is still struggling with her connectivity, Member Hlango.
Okay. Thank you very much, honorable members. And the one thing, Speaker and Chairperson, that made me happy is the language and the attitude of Honorable Maukwe, the way she was presenting issues. She was part of the team. She was not talking like an opposition, and she avoided politicizing issues. And this is the kind of the spirit that I like and I appreciate that we work as a team together and represent those people that they have voted for us to be in here. And to all members, thank you very much.
Chair, wait. Chair, did you say Honorable Mountain?
Didn't I say Maukwe?
Did you say Mountain? Did you refer to me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Are you not happy that I'm applauding you?
I'm worried. You are trying to bribe me. I'm worried.
She should be very worried.
No, I'm not bribing you. I'm just telling it as is, really. We need to say it when you are doing good things and not just criticize you. Thank you very much. Leadership, thank you for giving us your time, for being with us. And we will meet on Thursday, honorable members. See you then. Please take care, be safe, and don't risk. Please. Thank you,
Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Wash your hands.
Cindy, you'll have to change the Thursday time. Cindy.
Eat healthy.
Re a leboga, Chair.